Good afternoon. We are the Group 4 and we'll be presenting to you the Chapter 4 of this discussion, or called Research Methodology. Before we begin, let me introduce to you the members of our group. Rolina Aguilar, or Miss Bing, Karen Joy Di Castro, Irene Crisantimum Lim, myself, Ronald Binilo, and Marie J. Sapanlilio. Now, let's proceed. Under the research methodology, there are 6 topics included: the research design, the research locale, profile of the respondent, sampling design, method or methods of data collection, and method or methods of data analysis. As defined in our Blue Book, Research Design, it is researcher's plan of action on where to source the data, what type of data to collect, how the data will be collected, what method to be used for data analysis. This explains the general plan or blueprint of addressing the research objective of the study. In a research design, there are various types which are presented in the Blue Book. These are descriptive, exploratory, causal explanatory, correlational, comparative, evaluative, experimental, and action research. To continue, research locale. This discusses the place or setting of the study or investigation. It describes in brief the place where the study is conducted or being studied. We also some important features which have the bearing on the present time. The research locale is vital in this process because you need to make decision on what specific subject you are researching. In location you are going to be conducting research. Next, profile of the respondent. But before that, let us know what is respondent. Respondent is the individual who answer or responds to the question. Respondents are those individuals who complete a survey or interview for a researcher who provide data to be analyzed for a research study. It is important to describe the target population or sample frame in a study. In a demographic data, respondents can be in any age, gender, dialect, religion, household size, number of years, or household income. Once the population have already identified, the population are large in nature, sampling is needed as discussed in the Blue Book. But why do we need sampling? Based on the books of G.F. Calderon, sampling makes possible the study of a large or heterogeneous population or a population of diverse in character content. Sampling is more economy. Sampling is more faster to collect the data. Sampling is for accuracy because if the data collection takes long, the previous data collected might be obsolete. Now, sampling also saves the source of data from being consumed. Sample. Suppose we want to find out whether the coffee in that shop tastes good. Without sampling, then you have to buy the and drink the coffee shop what it sells. Next, sampling has 2 general types. One is the probability sampling and the non-probability sampling. Probability sampling is selected when the population by means of some systematic way in which element of the population has a chance of being selected. Sample as enumerated in the Blue Book are the random, systematic, stratified, cluster, area, double, and multi-stage. While for non-probability sampling means the sample is not a proportion of the population or there is no system selected in the sample. The selection depends upon the situation. Example, yung quota, judgment, convenience, accidental, snowball, and purpose. To continue further, the discussion of the methods of the collection, may I call on Ms. Jaisa.
Okay. Methods of data collection. First is the data collection definition. It is the process of gathering, measuring, and analyzing accurate data from a variety of relevant sources to find answers to research problems, answer questions, evaluate outcomes, and forecast trends and probabilities. There are 2 types of data classification. One is the primary data, which are data that are gathered from primary sources such as survey, focus group, sample personal interviews, or sample organizational group or family. Surveys, self-completion questionnaires, interview, completed questionnaires, on-site surveys. and route surveys or triangulation. Those are mixed or qualitative research. While the common sources of secondary data for social science include censuses, information collected by government departments, organizational records, and data that was originally collected for other research purposes. Next po. Advantage of primary data over secondary data. First is give the detailed definition of terms and statistical units in the survey. Secondary data have little or no explanatory notes and may contain clerical and typographical mistakes. It also includes a copy of the schedule and description of the procedure in the selection of the type of sample and in collating the data. It also break down into finer classification. Next slide po. Advantage of secondary data. They are more convenient to use, economic, use of time and resources due to the data that are collected are already cleaned and stored. They tend to be high quality since it is already been validated. Analysis and interpretations are done more easily, and it provides a unique, detailed picture of the population. Libraries make secondary data more easily accessible. Next slide. Research instruments or tools, ways of collecting data. Before that, the research instruments, it is actually the choice of method depends upon some factors such as nature of the problem, population or universe of the study, cost of survey, and time factor. Ways of collecting data. There are two ways to collect the data, which are clerical tools and the mechanical devices. For the clerical tools, it is used when research studies people and gather data on the feelings, emotions, attitudes, and judgment of the subject. Samples are questionnaire, interview, empirical observation method, registration method, testing methods, and the like. While the mechanical device are used on experimental research in the chemical, biological sciences, industry, or agriculture. Samples are microscopes, telescopes, thermometers, rulers, and monitoring devices. Thank you.
So one of the ways of collecting data, as mentioned earlier, is through questionnaire. So what is a questionnaire? Questionnaire, as defined by Good, is a list of planned, written questions related to a particular topic with space provided for indicating the response to each question, intended for submission to a number of persons for reply. So in other words, questionnaire is simply a set of questions which, when answered properly by a number of properly selected respondents, will supply the necessary information to complete a research study. So questionnaire, next slide po. Questionnaires has an advantage and disadvantage. Among the advantages of questionnaires, as mentioned in the books of J.F. Calderon, are: first, it is easy to construct. So the rules of construction are easy to follow. Next is distribution is easy and inexpensive, since many of the respondents can be reached by copies of questionnaire either by mail or by personal distribution. Next, responses are easy to tabulate. Generally, responses to a questionnaire is standardized, so this makes tabulations easy. Respondents' replies are free, so the respondent's replies are of his own free will because there is no interviewer to influence him. Next is confidential information may be given freely if the respondent can be made anonymous. So respondents are hesitant to tell the truth if they are not made anonymous because they also want to save themselves from embarrassment or trouble which may result from the revelation of confidential data. Next, the respondents can fill out the questionnaire at will. So the respondents can accomplish the questionnaire anywhere at any time at his own convenience. So lastly, the respondent can give more accurate replies. So he has time enough to think effectively of his replies. So next slide po. So disadvantage of a questionnaire. First, it cannot be used with those who cannot read nor write well, especially those who are totally illiterate. So if a respondent gives a wrong information, it cannot be corrected at once. It may also leave some or many questions unanswered because he might not understand the significance of the information he gives. It also has limited number of choices because the respondent may be forced to select responses that are not his actual choices. So this is true with the yes or no questions. Next slide po. Now we will be discussing the types of questions as in survey questionnaire. So according to form, we have free answer type and the guided response type. In free answer type, it's also called open form or open-ended and unguided response. Here, the respondents answer the question in his own words and in his own way. In guided response type, it is also called closed form or restricted type. So the respondent here is guided in making his reply. Another type of questions asked in survey questionnaire according to the kind of data asked for. Next slide po. Is through descriptive data or verbal data, quantified numerical data, intensity of feeling, emotion, or attitude, degree of judgment, understanding, and reasoning. So, in descriptive data, for example, what kind of house do you live in? So in here, you need to answer the question either concrete, bamboo, or wooden. Or it can be others. In quantified or numerical data, for example, how old are you or what is your average monthly income? So it involves numbers. Next, intensity of feeling, emotion, or attitude. So for example, do you agree to have only one day election set for local and national officials? So your answer would be either strongly agree, fairly agree, or disagree, or strongly disagree. Next is the degree of judgment. So in the degree of judgment, either your question would be, how serious is the problem or the drug addiction? It can be very serious or fairly serious or not a problem anymore. Next is understanding. In here, you are required to give explanation. For example, explain what democracy is. And lastly is reasoning. For example, why do you prefer democracy than dictatorship? So that is reasoning. For the methods of data analysis, it will be discussed by the next presenter. Thank you.
Method or methods of data analysis. Analysis is defined as the process of breaking up the whole study in its constituent parts of categories according to the specific questions under the statement of the problem. Basically, it is the detailed examination of a topic. The method section of a research paper provides information of by which a study's validity is judged because unreliable method produces unreliable results and misappropriated interpretation of findings. The steps in data processing are the same whether one uses quantitative or qualitative study, but what is done within each procedure is different. Raw data is cleaned or edited before being subjected to coding or classification and then analysis. Next slide.
Okay. Moving on, methods of data analysis. So for methods of data analysis, it can either be qualitative, quantitative, or mixed method. For qualitative methods, one can also use techniques such as content analysis, thematic analysis, discourse analysis, grounded theory, and even descriptive statistics. As for quantitative method, there is inferential statistics as well as statistical modeling. Or there's this mixed method where you can also use both the qualitative and quantitative techniques in your study. So as an add-on, both qualitative and quantitative methods of data analysis may be subjected to computer programs or software packages. For processing descriptive data, computer programs such as Nude IST or Ethnograph and even InVivo may be used, while statistical software packages are also available like SPSS, Stata, R, SAS, and Python.
We also have reminders on ethical issues while gathering data. First, we have to explain full the purpose of the study, disclose the sponsoring organization, if any, discuss the specific duties, data expected from the respondent, introduce oneself by showing credentials, respect the right to privacy of the individual, ensure data confidentiality, never bribe or threaten respondent in exchange for information, respect the opinion of the respondent, don't argue. Next.
So, additional reminders. As a researcher, you have to acknowledge all data sources in the final report, provide the respondents with a copy of the final report if this was agreed upon at the start of the project, and properly disseminate all the information and the results of the study. It will also help if validation meetings within the respondents are held before the report is finalized.